Hey guys, welcome back to RevAtlas. I'm Sandeep, and in today's video we're going to be comparing two different camera phones. And the first phone is the iPhone 11 Pro Max, which is the latest and best camera from Apple and is also one of the best camera phones on the market right now. But what we'll be comparing it is to one of its predecessors, and that is the iPhone 4S itself. So this smartphone came in 2011 and is perhaps one of the most iconic camera phones of the past decade, and in particular perhaps one of the most important camera phones for Apple themselves, because prior to this you would imagine that most iPhones were good in terms of camera, but they weren't exactly all that great. So the iPhone 4S was one of the first camera phones from Apple to actually be good in terms of the overall image quality and video quality itself, and that is why we're going to be comparing it to the iPhone 11 Pro Max. The 4S came back in 2011 and this is now in 2019. So we're going to be taking a look at what has changed over the years, what has remained the same, and just how much of a difference there is between these two camera phones, which are and were the best in their respective era. Now before we get started, please do make sure to give us a thumbs up at the end of the video if you happen to enjoy it, and also hit the subscribe button for more videos like this. Now let's get this video started. The iPhone 4S features an 8-megapixel sensor made by Sony with a 5-element f2.4 lens. That's not really a great spec by today's standards, but it was good enough back then to make it one of the best imaging smartphones on the market. Better yet, Apple even retained the same sensor with slight tweaks from 2011, which was when we got the 4S, up until 2015 when it finally changed the sensor with the iPhone 6s. So in between that, we had the iPhone 5, iPhone 5s, 6, as well as 6 Plus, all with the same sensors, albeit with slight tweaks to the aperture, lens and image processing. Fast forward to 2019 and you have the iPhone 11 Pro Max and 11 Pro, which have primary 12-megapixel f1.8 cameras with optical image stabilization, telephoto 12-megapixel camera 2x the focal length, f2 aperture with OIS, and finally an ultra-wide-angle 12-megapixel camera with f2.4 aperture and 120-degree field of view. One of the first things that you will notice when you compare the images side by side is how the processing has changed over the years. Yes, you have better dynamic range, higher sharpness and better detail, but the primary difference is in terms of colors, where the iPhones have gotten more saturated over the years, similar to some other Android phones. This could be a result of giving people what they wanted as opposed to what Apple thinks that they want, and also people generally preferring slightly more saturated look than natural. Take these two photos for example. The iPhone 4S is actually undersaturated and the white balance is also a bit off. The 11 Pro Max gets the white balance right, but it's a bit more saturated than what they actually look like in reality. Dynamic range is very good on the 4S even by today's standards, especially when you use the HDR mode. It isn't as dramatic or popping as the HDR on some phones on the market, but in terms of pure dynamic range it does very well, and the main difference is observed in highlights, while the shadows also get a decent boost. 11 Pro Max has exceptional dynamic range and is one of the best on the market with the likes of the Pixel 4 series. The autofocus speeds are also fast on the 4S and is almost always in focus, unlike some other smartphones from this era. The only area where it seems to suffer a bit is in terms of close-up shots, where there is some reluctance to focus at one go and it takes a few attempts at times to get it right. Shutter speed is pretty good on the iPhone 4S, but there is a bit of a shutter lag. Sometimes when you press the shutter button, it takes a moment before it can actually capture the photo. A smaller sensor and smaller aperture aren't exactly ideal for a shallow depth of field, and hence you can't get as shallow a depth of field as the 11 Pro Max on the 4S. You also don't have a portrait mode, which applies an artificial but still good looking bokeh to your subject or object on the 4S. The most tangible difference, however, appears when the light drops. While the HDR mode ever so slightly improves the low light photos by reducing the blown out highlights when the phone tries to bump up the shadows compared to a regular mode, the iPhone 4S is no match for the 11 Pro Max, which has superior image stacking algorithm that combines several frames to create a brighter, sharper and more attractive looking image with lesser noise. The iPhone 11 Pro Max also has added advantage in the form of optical image stabilization, which allows it to take longer shutter speed without having much shakes. Using night mode only makes it much better, and the difference here is huge as the 11 Pro Max has one of the best night modes on the market. The front-facing camera on the 4S is a VGA camera, while the 11 Pro Max gets a 12-megapixel f2.2 sensor. Naturally, as you'd expect, the selfies from the 4S aren't very great in terms of detail or sharpness, and dynamic range is also poor and there are a lot of aberrations. In comparison, although the 11 Pro Max isn't the best selfie smartphone on the market, it still takes much more detailed photos with greater dynamic range and has also a wide-angle mode to capture more in the frame. You can also take a portrait mode with lighting options to capture yourself with more emphasis. Videos max out at 1080p 30fps on the 4S, but iPhones were one of the best in terms of video, and the 11 Pro Max continues that legacy by providing the best video quality at the highest frame rate possible. The iPhone 4S videos are incredibly stable just like the 11 Pro Max, and all three cameras at the back can do up to 4K 60fps, and the consistency in terms of color, dynamic range and overall feel is great on the 11 Pro Max. The biggest leap perhaps comes from the front-facing camera video, where the 4S could do 640 by 480 pixels at 30fps, which is due to the camera module itself having just VGA resolution. In comparison, the 12MP front-facing camera of the 11 Pro Max can do 4K video not just at 30fps but even at 60fps, and the video resolution is 27 times that of the 4S. So as we saw from the video, a lot has changed, but one thing that remains constant is the fact that Apple still makes the best videos on any camera phone on the market right now. But apart from that, although there has been a change in terms of the hardware itself, there are more cameras on the back of the 11 Pro Max compared to the single camera on the iPhone 4S. But we have seen the addition of features such as optical image stabilization. We have also seen that there is a huge difference in terms of the software processing itself. And while this 4S also had HDR, now with image stacking as well as night mode coming into the picture, the overall image quality has taken a huge step forward. And if you look at the image quality back then and now, you would see that we are getting closer and closer to dedicated cameras, when compared to smartphones of the past. Now that's definitely a way forward, but I still would like to say that the iPhone 4S perhaps has the best design for a smartphone or an iPhone till date, and that's something that I don't think will change anytime soon. Maybe next year when they actually announce the iPhone 12, which is supposedly going to have the same sort of back pattern, etc., but with the sides that is similar to the iPhone 4 and 4S itself. Let me know what you guys think about the upcoming phones, and also what you think about the iPhone 4S and even the 11 Pro Max in this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. See you again in the next one.